Nintendo's central mission is often given as to surprise and delight its audiences, and this is certainly true. But there is another foundational principle that this video seeks to explore. It is one that Nintendo has showcased before, and it is a Japanese word expressed with two kanji symbols, which is called dokuso. Satoru Iwata gave his personal interpretation in a 2012 presentation where he stood in a room underneath the kanji symbol for Dokuso and explained it as creating something unique. He said that this is a term which has guided Nintendo since the early days of the company when Hiroshi Yamauchi was president, although, to be fair, Nintendo was already 60 years old before Hiroshi took up the company presidency. We know that this word was not a one-off bit of interest for an early Nintendo Direct, but a really key element of Nintendo's philosophy. In a recent podcast from ex-Nintendo of America employees Kit and Krista, Kit Ellis commented, "There is another phrase in Japanese that I think is called dokuso or something along those lines. It means to create something unique, and that's kind of more for the product-oriented people where you don't just make iterations of the thing you've made before, like make something people haven't experienced, something people may not know that they want yet. It is your job to be the embodiment of this concept of dokuso." Kista Yang echoed this, saying, "I remember that as well, and put it into the context of Nintendo's well-known mission statement to surprise and delight." Dokso is a bit tricky to track down precisely using English characters, since without the long O sound at the end, it is translated most commonly as toxin or element, not the same thing at all. And by the way, I do apologize for my pronunciation, which is probably butchering it multiple times during this video. However, the term is written with the kanji for independent and creation, which is a fair approximation in meaning for unique, although Iwata's translation of creating something unique makes clear that it is not just an outcome, but a process. We have seen it referred to in other contexts as well. In 2014, Philippe Lavoie, Deputy General Manager of Nintendo France, was discussing its origins a little more deeply. This is a Google translation of an article in DNA, no relation to the Japanese tech giant. DNA said, "Other manufacturers prefer the acquisition of studios to maintain a rhythm of releases. Isn't it a mistake not to develop the number of studios to have more killer apps more often?" Lavoie replied, "I'm not very well placed to talk about it, but I think it's related to the opportunities that arise. And then Nintendo's gameplay is very special. To get married, you need real closeness, having lived a little together, knowing each other well, while having a different experience. A marriage is very complicated. We must not forget that Nintendo is in the video game business, but had a very significant existence before video games. It is a company that has known different professions, and it is not easy to find teams that have an experience that can work well with ours. And then we must not forget that what we are looking for is above all the satisfaction of the player. If we manage to fulfill this part of the contract, we believe that success will be there. We do not think that the acquisition necessarily allows us to create added value for the player. An acquisition could be very artificial, buying studios and artificially adding games to the Nintendo catalog. But if these games are completely different from what we have done so far, there is a possibility that we will disappoint our fans from the first hour, and we don't want that. There is a Nintendo game philosophy, a way of playing. However, we play Call of Duty on the Wii, but with the gamepad, it's different. It's part of Nintendo's difference. It is important to be different, otherwise we no longer exist. Mr. Yamauchi speaks of doxo, of difference. It's fundamental. If we do not differentiate ourselves and if we go into competition with others, we have absolutely no chance of winning because we are smaller in terms of society. We will never be able to fight, so we must always renew ourselves and look for doxo, the difference, which must be palpable for users and which must be renewed over time. DNA observed, Nintendo is currently investing $500 million. Is this the price of the doxo? Lavoie responded, "Of course, and we have just delivered a new building to welcome more creatives into our offices in Kyoto. So yes, the search for and enrichment of difference is clearly an obsession of society." So difference gives us a slightly different nuance to the term, and it is interesting that even having Call of Duty on a Nintendo console would be considered different because of the gamepad and Nintendo's unique approach to it. Therefore, simply offering the same superficial experience as another console in the form of cross-gen games would be insufficient. In this case, it strikes me that the switch to mouse mode is a great example of infusing existing experiences with Nintendo's tradition of dokuso. There is huge potential for PC games and games with a traditional mouse input to be given a slightly different spin on the Nintendo system, whether purely for its portability or possibly by integrating other aspects of the console. Moreover, the idea that the difference must be palpable for users and renewed over time is interesting. While a lot has been made of the Switch 2 being a far more iterative console leap than we've been used to in recent years, it is clear that there will be noticeable differences that are felt and that maintain the sense of difference and uniqueness. It has also been referred to by Shigeru Miyamoto. In a 2020 Investor Q&A, Shigeru Miyamoto shared his perspective on the term from the vantage of a creative fellow. He said, Nintendo has never tried to compete on the game console performance specifications, but has always strived to create a variety of unique kinds of play by utilizing our game consoles as the medium. An area where we believe we have strength is the interface between player and game console, and that has been so ever since we first created the directional control pad for the controller. We have worked to create products that make use of our strengths in that field. No matter what kind of cloud or other technologies unfold in the future, the interface by which people connect with games will always be an area of strength for Nintendo, and we intend to continuously try new things with the interface. Dokuso, a Japanese term meaning being original and unique, is so important at Nintendo that we will use any medium if it would give us the opportunity to create unique and captivating play. But for the time being, we see video games as an excellent medium for creating unique ways to play, and they're also something that everybody can readily use, so that is where we are focusing. That being said, we try to think every day about possibilities for new kinds of play. Our job is to generate new demand in a field that is not a bare necessity. We believe we have shown you the fruits of our efforts a little, and we would like to continue doing so in the future. Okay, so we know that the concept of dokuso has a long history with Nintendo, but where did it come from? We certainly know that Yamauchi has his history with thinking differently. Nintendo in its day was involved in everything from love hotels and taxis to photocopiers and toys. Their toy lines did include a blatant Lego ripoff, but also had some innovative concepts. 2 years before the anthropomorphized Henry the Hoover was launched in the UK, and decades before the Roomba and other devices showed that self-moving Hoovers could be a thing, they introduced a remote control vacuum cleaner where you could put stickers for eyes onto it. Basically, Nintendo continually tried new things, pushing to see what worked, and then learned and iterated and doubled down on what did work. Of course, their early success in electronics with Game & Watch and the Color TV game series pushed them early into this direction, but perhaps if Ultra Hand had been a success back in the day, Nintendo would have pushed more into the toy business. It seems a turning point came after the original Nintendo business of Hanafuda cards had begun to flag. Around 1970, Yamauchi tasked the newly hired manager of the Hanafuda card assembly lines, a Kyoto-born electronics graduate by the name of Gunpei Yokoi, with a very specific mission. He told Yokoi to make something the company could sell at Christmas. When Yokoi asked what he should make, Yamauchi simply replied, "Something great." Thus, the Ultra Hand was born, and the fact that it was referenced so explicitly in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom shows that it was not only warmly remembered in the halls of Kyoto, but was a foundational example of dokuso, an original and unique idea that is still the seed corn for Nintendo creativity today. As Yamauchi observed, if we don't introduce innovative ideas, games themselves will become monotonous and boring. Still, innovation is intrinsically risky. Yamauchi's mid-20th century innovations brought Nintendo to the brink of bankruptcy before they discovered that toy making was where their future lay. Now, Nintendo has the capacity to expand its R&D budget hugely, but true innovation is tricky. There is also the inevitable risk of managerialism creeping in, with Nintendo now having a shared leadership structure where Shuntaro Furukawa's financial role and Shinya Takahashi's creative roles are quite distinct and both important. While this allows for far greater stability compared to the days of Yamauchi randomly assigning Yokoi to make a mystery product for the Christmas market, it is not without risks. Kit and Krista have talked about how Nintendo would often talk themselves into inactivity, and of course this is both a luxury and a curse of success. A desperate, hungry company can't afford to overthink and overanalyze. It just needs to act and try things. Would the Nintendo of today have created the Ultra Hand? Possibly not, but then it wouldn't have tried to market instant rice and photocopiers reportedly so dodgy that Nintendo technicians had to be called in either. Technicians, by the way, who charged, earning the company a nice but not enormously ethical extra income stream. This raises the question, of course, can Nintendo keep up its tradition of innovation even as it expands? It is a nice problem to have, but a problem nonetheless. I've noted before that Apple is an example of a company built on innovative approaches and yet which has fundamentally reiterated the same technology for nearly 2 decades now, with the iPhone, iPad and Apple Watch essentially being variants of the same technology, while the Apple Vision Pro has yet to thoroughly impress and penetrate a new market. It is not that Apple tech is substantially worse than it was before, but the pace of innovation is certainly far less than when it was a leaner, hungrier, upstart company. Just because Nintendo claimed to be dedicated to a belief in dokuso doesn't necessarily mean that they can deliver. Here I think they have a key advantage over their competitors, which is their roots in the toy business. Toys can be produced relatively inexpensively. Heck, Hanafuda cards were just printed cards after all. This means that as Nintendo scales, they can afford to put out a lot more different products alongside their regular games machines. These may remain in the electronic sphere, as this is where their area of competence currently is, but it doesn't necessarily follow that they will all be gamified. Yoshiaki Koizumi once observed on Reddit that for a budding game developer, I quote, "I think one of the best things that you can do would be to expose yourselves to other kinds of play, not just video games. It will give you a well-rounded sense of the ideas that go around the concept of play." And of course, Miyamoto's earlier comments reinforced that currently video games are their focus, but this doesn't mean that this is their only area of focus. Well, this certainly opens the door wide to different kinds of entertainment, and of course we've seen Nintendo walk through it twice recently, with the advent of Alamo and Nintendo Music. Alamo feels like a classic Nintendo toy, completely off the wall, dubiously likely to truly succeed, but with the outside potential of becoming something great. Nintendo Music is far more conservative as a music service, but still offers something different from Nintendo. In terms of dokuso, Alamo certainly feels the more radical, but both leverage existing content from Nintendo in innovative ways. However, the true potential for Nintendo is to try to step more radically outside the sphere of games and just come up with something brilliant and new in the broader field of play. I think for now this is unlikely. Throwing lots of random things against the wall to see what sticks might start to undermine their core message, and they have a lot riding on the success of the Switch 2 and of their broader IP campaign. But even on Switch, their innovation has had a great track record. Maybe Nintendo Labo and Mario Kart Live Home Circuit didn't quite go down in the history books, but there's no doubt that Ring Fit Adventure was one of the Switch's best and most successful titles. Moreover, because they're again leveraging existing technology, what Yokoi called seasoned technology, sometimes translated as withered technology. You can hardly get more seasoned than chunks of cardboard after all. The cost of failure is relatively low, and the potential to be gained from those rare successes is high. I'm not quite sure how I would formalize this into a specific forecast because it's very difficult to predict something surprising and unique, but my hunch is that we will continue to see innovations like Alamo, Labo and Ring Fit at least as frequently as we've been seeing them at the moment, if not more so. Not only is it incumbent on the Switch 2 to experiment and push the former Switch 2 so that it models dokuso and provides new avenues for Nintendo to explore as the Switch concept ages out, but also as Nintendo moves to being an IP company, there is a lot more potential to leverage the characters and worlds in innovative ways, whether through toys, music, or other means. Personally, I want a return of the Nintendo knitting machine. Yoshi's Woolly World and Kirby's Epic Yarn would be even more exciting if you could actually knit the characters as you play. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, consider checking out the Patreon. Do like, share, comment and subscribe, and I shall see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.